Welcome to Sunday Night Prime. I'm Father Andrew Apostoli, a member of the Franciscan Friars of the Renewal, and it's my pleasure to be your host for today's special program. You're going to find it, I'm sure, very, very fascinating. Before we get into that, let me remind you that if you have any questions or comments or suggestions for programs, please send your emails to sundaynightprime@ewtn.com. That's sundaynightprime@ewtn.com. Well, I greet you with the greeting of St. Francis. May the Lord give you his peace. You know, we're coming close to the second anniversary of the death of Father Benedict Groeschel. He was so much a part of EWTN, and he was the one who started Sunday Night Prime. So we want to remember him. Many people do write to us, I should tell you that. People are saying that, he affected their lives. They pray to him even for favors, intercession. And, some, are saying, hope that someday his cause for possible canonization will be opened. I'm sure that will happen. You have to wait 5 years after the death of the person before you can open the cause. So, but we felt that we have to do something special for Father Benedict. And there was one place that he loved very, very much. It was called Children's Village. And so we're going to do a program on that. We're going to call this Father Benedict Groeschel's Years at Children's Village. And to be a part of this show, we have two special guests today who knew Father, and they'll tell you about their working. They came after he had left Children's Village, but they knew him very well and became very good friends to Father Benedict. It's a pleasure to have both of you. We have, first of all, Emerita Chaplain, Reverend Colleen Holby. Welcome.
Hi, Father Andrew.
Reverend Holby. And we have also Dr. Jeremy Coburn, who is the President and Chief Executive Officer of Children's Village. Welcome.
Thank you, sir. Good to be here, Father.
Okay, it's a pleasure to have you, and getting to know you better myself. I know you had a very deep friendship with Father.
I did.
And he did influence your life, and I think it would be very nice if you would want to share a little bit of your own background.
Yeah, I would love
just a little
to.
bit.
I would love to. Yes, Father Benedict came to Children's Village in 1959 and left in 73. I came in 78, and I'll talk about that later, but I'm from Mansfield, Ohio originally, and I went to Wheaton College, and after Wheaton College I went with an organization called Young Life. For 15 years I worked on staff of Young Life, and then I came to Children's Village in 78 as assistant Protestant chaplain. And then because of Father Benedict, I was able to become the director of pastoral care. And so I am very grateful to that. So that's a little bit of my background.
All right.
I was ordained in the United Church of Christ in 1980. That's helped me in my work at Children's Village very much.
Okay. Well, it's a pleasure to have you.
Yeah,
Reverend
thank
Holby.
you.
Okay.
I met Father Benedict in 2004 when the trustees appointed me as the President and Chief Executive Officer. Prior to Children's Village, I had spent 7 years at the Easter Seals organization, went to school in Kansas, in Emporia, Kansas, and came to New York to do my doctorate. And Father Benedict changed my life. He changed how I thought about children and families. He changed my thinking about faith, and he changed my view of the work we do through his example. And I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah, that's a powerful
yeah,
thing.
right.
Yes, he has had an impact on a lot of people. I'm wearing gray because of the new community we started. With the Capuchins,
Right.
with the brown habit, and when we left, we had to change it a little bit, so we put different colors. So, but Father has influenced many, many lives, and people often thought I looked like him.
You certainly
Yeah,
do.
you
You certainly do.
Yeah.
I always tell the story of Mother Teresa of Calcutta. I was standing in her convent one day, and she walks in the South Bronx. She walks in and she takes a quick. I was only just she and I. She took a quick look at me. She said, "Father Benedict, how are you?" I said, "Mother, it's not Father Benedict. It's Father Andrew. Father Andrew, you look like Father Benedict." So I said, "That settles it."
I'm
Well,
sure if you walked the campus today,
Yes.
it's been at least 3 years since Father Benedict walked that campus.
that's right, yeah.
But if you walked that campus today, Father Andrew, many would think that Father Benedict was back.
Right.
You know, the morning after, I know we want to get into the program, but I have to just share this. You know, he died on a Friday night,
Yes.
and the next day in the cathedral, Sacred Heart Cathedral in Newark, they had the beatification of the first American
Oh, yeah.
sister. Now she's Blessed Maria Teresa Demjanovich. Okay. And she was beatified. Now, Father had died the night before, and a lady had to come to me after the Mass for Blessed, Teresa, and she said, when you walked out, I thought, Father Benedict, he died last night. Here's Father Benedict. I said,
Oh, those are great stories.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was that big an impact. Yeah. Well, let's get on. We have a lot to share here. He often spoke about, Children's Village. Being, as if I can quote this, one of the happiest times of my life. His years there, you mentioned, Reverend Holby, that he was there from 1959 to 1973, 14 years. And he went to take the place of a fellow Capuchin who had got sick.
Yeah.
Right.
And he thought it would be just a temporary assignment, and it ended up 14 years,
Yes.
So it's a great thing, and of course, he certainly had a great love. He said he didn't have the vaguest idea what he was going to do. He was just newly ordained, too.
That's right, yeah.
And so he didn't have the vaguest idea what he was supposed to do at Children's Village, but he certainly learned and left his mark there.
You know what? He never really left.
He never really left. That's right.
That's true.
Yeah, his spirit is still there,
yeah.
isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think he always had Children's Village in his heart. See, I knew him, or I came to be part of the new community. I worked with him first for 2 years before the community began, and I knew him only after Children's Village, but he always talked about it.
Right.
And he always said, he loved it there, and he loved the boys there, and he had a great
He
love.
said to me once that there was never a day in his life that he didn't pray for Children's Village.
That's
Isn't that
true.
great?
Yeah.
He never forgot those young people. And I think it's because he had very great sensitivity to people's suffering, and a lot of these boys, came from rather tough backgrounds.
And it was pretty amazing that he had such a memory for detail. In the last months of his life when he was in New Jersey, and I used to visit him with his favorite juicy pastrami sandwich and his chicken soup from one of our local delis, he would ask me about kids that he knew by name, and these were grown men now.
Mm-hmm.
But he wanted to know if they were in contact with us. He had stories about every one of them. Whenever he came to the chapel that he was instrumental in building on our campus, he would often point out these stained glass windows and the boys who are represented in the art. I mean, he knew their stories by name. He knew every one of them. Each one of our stained glass windows in the chapel represents a set of boys who were on the campus when the chapel was being built. And Father Ben knows the story of every one of them.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah, he had a phenomenal memory. They used to kid him, Father, you remember everybody's name. I remember a man, he said to him, Father Benedict, do you remember me? And he stared at the guy, and he says, I talked to you on a staircase. Now, who's going to remember that? Yeah, I talked to you on a staircase about 8 years ago. Sure enough, that was him.
Yeah,
You know?
I'm not surprised.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
boy.
He used to he could go through poetry, and he said he read it all in his mind. He said it was all there.
Yeah.
And he remembered names. Somebody said to him, Father, you remember all these names? He says, as long as they lived before 1500, I remember that. Yeah. Well, Dr. Jeremy Coburn.
Yes, thank you.
Could you say a little bit about Children's Village, just so
Be
that
happy to.
people get a little bit of an idea, of the facility?
The organization was founded in 1848 by a number of women, and by 1851 had a charter to work with young men who were being arrested in New York City and the greater New York City area. In the mid-1800s, there were lots of children being arrested for petty food-related crime for the most part.
Yeah, right.
And rather than sending them or letting them languish in a police station, they were sent to the children's village. The campus that Father Benedict came to live on is in Dobbs Ferry, which is right on the Hudson River. It was originally, I think, a 330-acre campus that was property that was purchased in 1898 and developed by 1901. We are still there. It's where our main residential programs are. But we have spread across the city because much of the work we do today is in the community. But on that campus, we probably have 300 young people living there today. And when Father Ben came to us, I think we were closer to 500. So there were a lot of young people that lived there. Most of them had to leave their family for one reason or another. Some were arrested for petty crimes. Others had just no family. Some were orphans. And that work, that piece of our work hasn't changed much. We still work with the same children in the same way. And we try to create family, which I think is the place where Father Ben and I connected the most, because he understood that living on that campus was not a solution for them, that they needed people in their lives, people that would love them for who they were in ways that an institution never could. And I know Father Ben captures that in his writing too, but I think he developed that principle while he was with us. I think it became abundantly clear to him very early on in his tenure at the Children's Village that while the village was a place of solace and peace and beautiful, it was inadequate in giving kids the sense of belonging and the love that communities could give them.
Yeah. He had a great sense of the young people's need to be loved, didn't he? You know, he said one time, one of the things I learned at Children's Village was, first of all, to be very grateful to God for my parents, you know, my brothers and sisters, because a lot of these children had none, or they did. Their parents were needy, and they just didn't get all that solid love in the beginning, you know. So it's a big place. Is it still 300 acres there?
No, I think it's a little under 200 at this point over the years, but still
It's
a big place.
Yeah. Now, it was mentioned about the cottages. They lived in cottages?
They did, and they still do.
They still do.
Actually, Children's Village started what's called the treatment cottage concept, where 9 to 12 children lived together. And when Father Ben lived with us, we actually had a family, a husband and a wife that lived in a separate part of the building, and the children lived in a dorm concept. We still have the same concept. The children live with us, but they have their own rooms, and we don't have house parents anymore. We have staff that work 8-hour shifts.
I see.
And so we have round-the-clock care for them.
Yeah, that's very, very important, isn't it? And I know that he said when he first got there, his beard and his habit, you know, walking around the campus made quite an impression on the kids, you know. And then there was also the sharing. He mentioned about sharing with the Protestant chaplain.
Right.
So, you know, the facilities there. I had the opportunity to go up and say Mass a few times for the Catholic students there, and you know, so that's a great thing. He said that Mass was obligatory. You know, is that you know, to try to get them there to come
In the old days.
In the old days, okay.
Yes.
In his days.
In his days.
Okay, in his days, yes. All right. Well, I want to go into that a little bit more, but we're coming up to our first break.
Okay,
so
yeah,
let's
right.
take the break, and then we can start fresh with a new idea. So please don't go away. This gets very, very interesting. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Sunday Night Prime. I'm Father Andrew Apostoli, your host for today's program, which is entitled Father Benedict Groeschel's Years at Children's Village. And our two very special guests are, let me get this, Emerita Chaplain, Reverend Colleen Holby, and Dr. Jeremy Coburn, President and Chief Executive Officer of Children's Village. So again, welcome. It's a pleasure having you on the program. As we were ending the first segment, we were talking about Father's relationship with the Protestant chaplain. Reverend Holby, would you want to
Yes, I would like to talk about my relationship to Father Benedict. Actually, he left in '73, and I came in '78. But what I soon found out was that most of the phone calls that came in from former residents of Children's Village always wanted to know where was Father Benedict and how could they reach him. And I thought, who is this Father Benedict that everybody's talking about? I better meet him myself. Because it was interesting to me. He'd been gone 5 years and yet everybody was calling for him. So I actually didn't meet him until Christmas Eve of that year, which was a most wonderful night. My husband was still alive at that time. And we used to have a dinner for all the boys that didn't have any homes to go to over Christmas, which always broke Father Benedict's heart. And so he would bring gifts to everybody, and he always made certain that the Protestant kids got everything that the Catholic kids got. He would come and do the Mass, and then he would give the gifts out to the kids, and he would entertain them a little bit with his presence, and then he would leave. That first night, however, on Christmas Eve that he came, he kind of said it as he was running out the door, which he often was doing. He said, I got to run down and see some people at St. Patrick's Cathedral. So I said to myself and to my husband, Duncan, I said, you know, we should go home and watch it because it's on television tonight. Well, it wasn't just him going down there and helping. He did the homily. And I was really impressed. I said, wow, this is amazing. He's doing the homily on Christmas Eve at St. Patrick's Cathedral. So he came and would do the confirmation and communion and baptism of many, many of the kids, even though he was gone. And he soon began to realize that the kids needed more Catholic workers. And so he started promising to send brothers and priests there to help with the work. And they did, and we have lots and lots of contacts with them. But Benedict would come back, and I guess the best story I have to tell is a little bit in advance. I'll probably think of some things up into them. But after his accident in 2004 in Orlando, he was in I'm not sure what kind of a retirement, not a retirement place. Rehab place. Yep. Now, can you believe this? On Easter morning, he calls me from the retirement, rehab place, and says, now make sure, Reverend Holby, that you're giving those Easter bunnies to the Protestant boys. I said, oh, Benedict, don't tell me you remembered the Easter bunnies. And he had called and ordered those Easter bunnies for all the kids at the chapel. And I was so impressed that I'll never forget that as long as I live. Yeah. So he helped me a lot. My husband died in '82, and he was very helpful to support me and encourage me and help me as best he could. He'd write letters, he would encourage me, he'd call. And the other thing that I did with him was he used to speak over at Maryknoll on a Friday night, once a month I think it was. And I took every Protestant person I could take over to hear him over at Maryknoll, and that was a great time. It went for a couple of years that he did that. So I also went to some of his Saturday events that he had before Palm Sunday, which would be in a high school.
Oh, yes, yes.
All day long.
A Divine Mercy Day.
Wherever I heard that he was speaking, I usually ended up being there, so it was a wonderful time. And I'll probably think of some things as we go through the program that he did.
Well, what you shared is very, very telling, you know, when he, like you said, when he called to make sure the kids got those little Easter bunnies, you know, because, see, he had such a heart for people who suffered, people who were deprived, the poor, the needy, you know, broken families and all. I remember, he used to take care of a family. He told me he would have them come from dinner. I don't know if it was Thanksgiving or what day it was, but it was a very special day. And he said, I promised their mother, the grandmother, that I would take care of them. And so he always took care of them. Right. You know, I mean, over the years. Like you said, he could be gone for years, but he always kept it up. And, we know that he took care of a lot of poor people, especially when he began at Children's Village, taking care of the kids, giving food to them, and so on. Multiplied tremendously when he was working in the South Bronx. He'd give away 1,000 turkeys and hams and everything at Christmas, and then at Thanksgiving, at Easter. I always say the turkeys, when they heard his name at Thanksgiving time, they ran for cover.
Well, he always brought Christmas gifts. He had
Always.
some friends. I'm not sure where he found these friends. He always had people that would support whatever he was interested in, and he would bring Christmas gifts and always bring things to the kids, and they loved it.
Yeah. See, I think his great gift there was he remembered them.
Yes.
And that was important. He said in one of the things he mentioned, he said if the child did something good, he said I would always point that out to them and acknowledge. He said because a lot of the kids there at Children's Village lacked maybe a relationship to a father or even to adults. They were put down, pushed away, unacknowledged. He said, so whenever they did something good, I wanted to acknowledge them. So, which is the basis of love. If I could share with you a little quote here. This is from Pope John Paul in one of his letters, Pastores Dabo Vobis, it's called, I will give you shepherds. He writes this. He said, man cannot live without love. He remains a being that is incomprehensible for himself. His life is meaningless if love is not revealed to him. If he does not encounter love, if he does not experience it and make it his own, if he does not participate intimately in it. And I think in his own way, Father Benedict made many people experience, many of those young children who had a lot of brokenness, experience love. Right. That they were loved by him.
When I was just appointed as the chief executive, and I'm the 9th chief executive in 165 years. So we've had very stable leadership. But Father Ben knew at least 3 of the former presidents, and he wanted to meet me. In many ways, I felt that I was being vetted by him even after I got my job. That this was a second interview, and during that meeting. He reminded me that every time I walked that campus that my heart should be broken because we were not adequate. Even though we were working really hard, we could never replace the love that children needed. And I was fascinated by that because most of the world would come up to Children's Village, look around and say, what an amazing place. And these kids are so lucky to have this place. That's true. It's a beautiful place, and
yes, sir.
Generations of people have made it so, people like Father Benedict. But he also understood that despite all that was visual, that the kids still hungered for this sense of love and belonging. And to his dying day, he never walked away from that concept. And I think I understood it most. When I first met him, I didn't understand how a priest who had taken a vow and moved away from family could understand that concept as well as he did. But when he was in New Jersey, I watched his sister care for him. And over those meals, I realized that Father Ben valued the concept of family. He loved his sister. He loved his parents. He had great memories, and he brought that same love to the work and to the children, and I'm sure to the priesthood. He was incredibly inclusive. He spoke about race and poverty in ways that people didn't speak about because he was willing to be honest, and he understood it. So when he went into the Bronx, when he talks about going into the Bronx, he went as a missionary, as a servant, and as someone that wanted to help and understand the people, not as someone who was just looking for a child.
Yeah, you're right. He did have that concern for everyone. I mean, sometimes I know, Dr. Holby, that letter we have from Brother Tim. Doesn't he mention that? He says something about he comes at all different times, you know, is awakened at night. See that paragraph there? Would you want to read that? Father Benedict was often awakened.
Well, the one person that really knows a lot more personally was a Capuchin Franciscan named Brother Tim Jones, who worked with Benedict for 10 years at Children's Village. And he's also been back and helped us a lot. And he says, my main responsibilities were assisting Father Benedict on campus with various ministries, such as offering religious instructions for each of the Catholic residents weekly, coordinating the altar servers for Sunday service, visiting the cottages each week, when we brought them cakes and pastries from the local supermarket who donated them because of their respect for Father Benedict. We traveled to New York City often during an average week to visit the residents who left and offer any supportive services we could. In addition, we also stopped off to each of the group homes to offer support to the staff and residents. Father Benedict was often awakened late at night by a former resident who wished to speak with him about a serious issue, and without giving it another thought, he would get dressed and drive to whatever part of the city the young man was living and offered any services needed. Thanksgiving time, Father Benedict would deliver countless boxes of food to the needy, and each Christmas would bring gifts to every resident on campus and to the homes of the former residents he was still in contact with. He says, I will always be grateful to the good Lord for allowing me to live with a saint, and to Father Benedict for his consistent, inspiring example. So that's a great report of somebody who worked with him for 10 years.
Yeah, he did. And he always had that thoughtfulness of those in need. Yeah, it was a profound thing. I mean, when I first got to work with him, I know it was kind of, I didn't know how to express my reaction. I was so happy that he asked me to come and work with him, you know. And he's a great man, you know.
He also had a great spirit of forgiveness because of how he felt about people. He was willing to forgive them and to try and see if he could help them in some way, possible way.
He reached out to really the most needy people, and he was concerned, you know, that for their well-being. I know he particularly mentions when he got there, he was a little bit distressed that the religious education level needed a lot of lifting up, and so he made that, you know, one of the focal points there, and the Mass, you know, he used the Mass as a means of reaching the young people. I remember I mentioned that I had said Mass there a few times. The thing that struck me, these boys were so enthusiastic. You know, they were the older boys, they were all dressed in their cassocks and surplices, and they were standing right around the altar. I didn't know if they were supposed to concelebrate with me or what. And they are, they're leaning up against the altar. And I said, well, maybe Father Benedict had them there because this is the perfect way to keep their attention. You know, because otherwise, he said, when he first got there, they were very distracted and didn't know what was going on. I mean, the Mass was in Latin, too.
That was Father Benedict's gift. He knew how to engage people.
Oh, right.
He knew how to engage teenagers. He knew how to engage a kid who was completely brokenhearted, and the last thing he wanted to do was to be around a priest.
Yeah.
Father Benedict had the gift of engagement.
Yes.
He really... So he could make us all feel very important in the same conversation. And that's, most people don't know how to even be engaged. He overflowed with that kind of engagement.
That's right.
And it was really, really a gift. Really a gift.
I would encourage people to read his autobiography, the book, because in there it tells, and at his funeral, I just couldn't believe how many people spoke of what he had done. I thought, how in the world did he do all this? And Brother Tim said he never slept.
That's true. I don't know how he did it, you know. Yeah, he had one interesting characteristic when you mentioned that, Dr. Holby. If you were driving him in the car and he was in the seat, you know, the passenger seat, and he was asleep, you know, he would often, and this often happened to a lot of people, as people come in there, he would all of a sudden wake up, turn here, you know, he woke up right when you had to make the turn.
Oh, really?
You know, yeah.
He'd be right on. It would be a right turn.
It'd be the correct place to turn. I don't know how he did it, but a lot of people said he did it. It was amazing. It was amazing because he looked like he was fully asleep. You know, next thing you know, turn right. You know, turn left. You know, and go.
The
well,
other one more thing. The amazing thing. Oh, it's time to.
No, that's okay. Yeah.
There were many professors and psychiatrists at Children's Village that wanted to meet him, and so he always wanted him to come over to Trinity. So I'd take him over and meet with him, and he was very gracious.
Yeah. Yeah, he had a great impact. Well, we're going to have to take a little break here. Don't go away. We've got some very interesting stories to tell about Father Benedict. Okay? We'll be right back. Hi, welcome back to Sunday Night Prime. I'm Father Andrew Apostoli, your host for today's program, which is entitled Father Benedict Groeschels' Years at Children's Village. Father Benedict Groeschels' years at Children's Village, which he always said about the happiest years of his priestly life, his dedication with the young people. And our special guests, let me reintroduce them again. We have Emerita Chaplain, Reverend Colleen Holby, who is now Emerita Chaplain at Children's Village, and Dr. Jeremy Coburn,
Yes.
who is the President and Chief Executive Officer of Children's Village. So we've been sharing an awful lot about Father Benedict and his great love, his working with the kids. You know, he always had a sense of wanting them to experience love, because through human love, as that quote I shared before about Pope John Paul said, it's only through human love that we can begin to understand that God loves us. And he wanted each person, no matter how difficult things were, to know that God still loved them. He wanted them to have a sense of hope. They can be forgiven. They can begin again, you know. And that's an important thing to communicate to someone, isn't it, you know?
You know, one of the things that Benedict was concerned about in our relationship with each other and what we were doing was that he wanted to share with the psychologists and the social workers the value of spiritual understanding. So he would come and discuss, we would have seminars for him to discuss, and he did that 2 or 3 times during the years that I was there. And that's really important because he wanted the workers at Children's Village to understand how important the spiritual life was.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to make sure that he got credit for doing that because it was great.
Yeah, yeah. Well, he had, of course, the children had, I guess, was somewhat of a rule at that time to go to Mass on Sunday. But then he started to attract them to come during the week.
Right.
You know, he said he was getting 20, even 30 kids during the week. And he'd give them a little candy afterward. And they said, well, you're bribing them. He said, no, this is just to tell them that they've done something very good and they should have some kind of little reward, you know.
Well, I want to say how valuable it is that Children's Village has kept their religion department, because a lot of places have closed them down, and it's important that these kids understand their spiritual life. What happens, we have what we call a religious inventory that the parents sign. So we promise the parents to do what they ask us to do, whatever that might be. And they're pretty honest about whether they have faith or don't know exactly what church they might come from, but if they're Catholic, they put down Catholic, and we're to follow through on that.
Okay, that's very good.
See, I think what Father Ben did at Children's Village, in addition to this idea of belonging and helping kids move out of that institutional setting, was he developed a lot of formality around what was important. And he did that through a relationship, not through decree. Because he was not, I mean, I saw Father Ben angry once, so I know he was very capable of being an authority. But in his time at Children's Village, almost up to his death, every time he visited, he emphasized the need to have formality that was tied to relationships rather than decree. He helped build the chapel through his relationships. He helped design the stained glass windows because he knew the children. He brought children into the chapel initially because they had to be there, but to the latter part of his tenure, the rules had changed. They didn't have to come anymore, but they still came because he had developed a formal relationship with the staff in the cottages, and the staff understood that it was important for these children, if they were Catholic, that they participate in Catholic Mass. So there was, you know, he was never upset when kids didn't come. He went looking for them.
Right.
He was never. I mean, I meet so many people of faith that are upset that people don't come to Mass and don't come to church or don't come to temple. Father Ben was never upset about that. He was worried as to whether they were okay. You know, is he okay? He didn't come to Mass. What happened? Have you heard about? Have you heard from him? That's really the heart of a shepherd. It was not the heart of an authority or the person in charge. Why aren't they here? It was truly the heart of the shepherd. And even in his last days, when we had these lunches in New Jersey,
He's in the nursing home at
in
that
the
time.
nursing home, those were his questions. You know, are the kids coming? If they are not coming, are they okay? What's going on? Are they connected to another church? Are they connected? Maybe they don't want to come to church. Is there someone in their life that is interested in their faith and their well-being? Those were his questions of me.
Wow.
Every time we met. Every time we met.
Well, he worked well with Protestants, and he had a heart for ecumenical, activities and things like that. In fact, before Dr. Coburn came to Children's Village, we had a person in charge, and he told her he wanted me to be the director of pastoral care, and he would provide the Catholic brothers and priests to do the Catholic work, which he did. So that was that. I mean, we couldn't have survived because we wouldn't have been able to find all these people the way he had them, provided. So he always wanted them to come to Children's Village, and these young men had picked up on him, and they treated the kids the same way he did.
Yeah. He was an amazing person. I know when I had worked with him for 2 years at the Trinity Retreat, which we'll get into later, just was the place when he left Children's Village. He was assigned there by Cardinal Cook. Had asked him to open a house for priests for spiritual refreshment, renewal, relaxation, a place they could get away on a day off and to just be at ease, among other priests and so on. So it was a very good thing, and he always had that sense there, Let me read a little quote here, if I could. He always talked about goals, but he said small goals. For him, that was very important. Small accomplishments. You didn't say, didn't transform the whole thing overnight in one day or something like that. No, but small things, little by little. And he had this here. He said, in our frantic and self-centered world, most of us live lives that come and go largely unnoticed. As a priest, I have been made painfully aware of this many times. I always found it heartrending to officiate at a funeral which no one attends. An earthly life with all its struggles and joys and sorrows has come to its conclusion, but no one has cared enough to notice. Many of the boys at Children's Village came from backgrounds that threatened to keep them at the edges of life, the borders of society, and the very places where people are likely to live and die unnoticed. I felt very strongly that their every positive action should be remarked on and appreciated. In other words, acknowledged. That's why he always felt that very strongly. I thought it vital that at times they should be able to bask in an adult's approval and to know they were accepted without reservation. A constant goal of mine was to do whatever I could to help these boys become aware of their infinite worth as children of God, as the ones for whom Christ gave his life.
What incredible insight.
Yeah.
Even stepping away for a second from the concept of faith. This is basic, foundational psychology.
That's right.
This is the core of the human success story. That someone else recognizes in us what's good about us.
Yeah.
Because we are often so self-deprecating, whether verbally or at least internally, we think so less of ourselves
Yeah.
that it takes the outside world to recognize that in us. And Father Ben, in the time that I knew him, he just didn't embody this concept. What made it different with Father Ben was that he went looking for things that he could compliment you about.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when he met my children for the first time and my wife, and it was our first meeting. He had something to tell each one of them that he had observed about them during the service, during the Mass. And then he took time out with me to talk about my children and what he saw in them.
Mm-hmm.
That's going above and beyond a normal introduction.
That's right.
And he did that with our children at Children's Village all the time.
Yes, he did.
He went out of his way to find reason to praise, out of his way to see beyond the brokenness, to see beyond the hurt. Later, especially in my time, when we were often talking about race and communities of color that were treated very differently. And he recognized that. He recognized the issues that our kids were straddled with and the burdens that they came to us with. And he always looked for ways to have that communication. And I met him after the accident. So he was not the same man that he was prior to that. And he used to always say that to me.
Yeah.
He said, I can't jump out of his chair and walk out and run across the campus with you. But every time he met a child in my presence, he always looked for something positive.
Yeah.
It was another gift.
Yeah.
Another gift.
And they wanted to stay around him when he
That's
came.
right.
Yeah.
They did.
He would sit in the hallway of the chapel because he couldn't get in much further. And we would bring the kids in, and they would sit at his feet and just, kind of talk to him. And
Yeah.
And these were kids that had nothing in common with him. I mean,
they didn't know him.
They didn't know him. They didn't share the same neighborhood. They didn't come from the same racial or ethnic background.
Yeah.
So everything that the world tells us keeps us, the things that keep us apart, when you were in Father Ben's presence were no longer
That's right.
no longer an
They were-
issue. There was something about his ability to bring us together.
Yeah. He went through a great crisis when he had gone there. Remember, we talked in the beginning of the program. He was only supposed to be temporary, but he was afraid if the priest got well, he would lose his job there. He loved it so much, So he said he was hoping
afraid
to do
to
the
pray.
will.
He was afraid to pray
Yeah.
for the healing of the priest.
That's right.
In fact, I would like to encourage everyone to read the book on his life, because after I read it, I remember I was flying on a plane and I had read it again the second time, and I just thought, this is just an incredible human being.
Yeah.
Who is as honest, and he was honest about his struggles and stuff. And
Yeah, he's very honest in the book.
That's what's hard to find in the religious world, is that kind of honesty that he had.
Yeah, he admitted his shortcomings. He said he was very attached, but he was struggling with the will of God. Was it his will or the will of God that he be there? And but he touched these young men with such deep love. Maybe a few other things to mention about him. One of the ways that he said he sort of rewarded those who were reliable and responsible when in taking them out on like a field trip. He took them up to Mary Knoll, which is a very nice campus there, and Garrison, I guess, to his friars. They look right over the Hudson River there. It's a very beautiful spot there. And then I always have to tell the story. Whenever you would meet Father Benedict, like he'd come like to one of the friaries and you'd say, hello, Father, hey, and you say, how you doing? He'd always say, it's the worst day of my life. He used to say that.
He loved to say that.
Yeah, it's the worst day of my life. But then one day, he shocked all the friars. He said, I'm going to tell you the really worst day of my life. And it was related to Children's Village. You see, he used to take the kids on these field trips. Well, one day, he must have taken them down to New York City. I don't know if he took them to the museum, American history, and So he's going back to Children's Village with the crowd, He's in charge of the group, responsible. So he's on the subway, and all of a sudden the door's closed, and he looks out the window of the subway door, and there's one of the boys standing on the platform. So he said he had to go up to the next stop, get off, make sure the other ones, kept going and get back. And so he goes back, and he's looking for this one boy that's lost, And then all of a sudden he goes out of the train station, and he sees this little dog, and he loved the pets. Okay, and he goes to pet the dog, and the dog bit him, So he started bleeding, and he said, "Well, either the dog or I was going to fall over at any minute, And so he went on for the rest of the day. Finally found that little boy, but he said that was the real worst day of his life, because again, that was one of his. He'd always say that when you'd ask him how you doing, So he had that kind of love for the boys. He started the Don Bosco Club,
He did?
Yeah, that room. I guess it was a special room.
It was a room with a pool table, I believe.
Yeah.
And,
Where was that, in Fanshawe?
in Fanshawe.
Yeah.
Fanshawe is one of our cottages.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Where he lived.
because Father Benedict was good at creating space for people.
Yeah.
Right? I think he did
Oh,
that in the chapel. He created safety.
Yeah.
He created safety for me when I first was appointed at the Children's Village. He made sure that I had the history of the organization, that he introduced me to as many people. So he did that. And I'm not surprised that he created a room where kids could just break away from their daily routine and just come and play pool and sit and talk and
That's right.
have a few adults around them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Could you speak about him
Great.
being on the board, or his title was?
Well, he was. He was also affiliated with our board of trustees. I don't think he was a trustee, but he was
He's honorary member, maybe?
honorary member of the board of trustees.
Yeah.
And that was in recognition for his many, many contributions to making Father Ben played an important role in who we are today.
Yeah.
No question
Well,
about
the
it.
amazing thing is just of him providing all of these brothers. I mean, we have a couple pictures maybe we'll be able to show sometime, but there were just many, many men that came up to the village and would meet with these boys, and that was a wonderful gift to these kids to have it.
Yeah. The young men to kind of relate a little closer to them,
And he did speak highly of Dr. Coburn in services and stuff, and tell people. So it was a two-way street that they certainly supported each other.
When we later started the community, one of the things he was very big on, very insistent, is that we try as soon as possible to open a facility for homeless men. Right. Again, that space, you're creating space, providing for the needs of someone. He really had that in his heart. He really pushed that, and it was very good. Just a couple little other things were that he used to. I understand he fed the animals there.
That's a rumor.
and there was a little lamb by the name of
that followed him around.
Yeah, Lisa. He followed him around, and the kids used to see the lamb walking after Father Benedict. They call Father Benedict St. Francis.
Right.
and later on, when he was at Trinity Retreat, he was by the water there, and he would feed the ducks and the water, and he even took care of the cats. He said it's always good to have cats. If you're down by the water, they make sure there's no rats around and all that. But
what did he call that cat? You told me.
He had a little house for the cats
and he
called
it
Saint Katerina.
Yeah.
Katerina. So, well, later on, you mentioned too that he began to study for a degree in psychology at Iona University. He was there for 2 years. Then he went to Columbia to Teachers College and got a doctorate in psychology. Later on, Cardinal Cook asked him if he would open a facility for, priests where they could come for a day off. Their day off, they had no place to go, so it would be a place for priests to relax and spiritual direction too. And so Father spent so many years of his life doing that work. So, but you could see the roots right there at Children's Village. So, keep up the wonderful work you're doing, and and I'm sure Father's in heaven praying for you. And
we could use some more mentors.
Okay. Well. Okay.
And
well,
thank
maybe.
you for sharing Father Benedict with us, and
yeah.
for all the brothers and the priests that over these last 30 years have been part of who we are.
Yeah, well, it's a
We
it's a
feel
great,
blessed.
it's a double blessing,
Yeah.
you know, in the giving and the receiving, you know, which is very, very important. Well, we've tried to give a little bit of the life, those wonderful years, as he said, I have one more quote of his, if I may, just to add it here. Let's see. His memories of Children's Village, he said, they make me think again and again of how wonderful that time in my life was, of how productive God allowed me to feel. Well, we've come to the closing part, so we're going to do a little prayer, but I thank you, Dr. Holby, Reverend Holby, and
don't I
Dr.
wish.
Jeremiah Coburn, okay, for being our special guests. But let us pray. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Lord Jesus, we thank you for the life of Father Benedict, for the good example he has given us. May we learn from his great love and his concern for people, especially those who are in need and struggling, so that we might, like him, come to love your people, all your people, no matter who they are. We ask all these blessings in your holy name. And I bless you all now in the name of the Father, of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Again, thank you for being here. We make now a little fund appeal. You know, EWTN goes out to millions and millions of homes all over the world, and we don't know how many people they're going to know you now, and you know, they're going to, but they'll know about Children's Village. But it's a wonderful thing, you know, to be able to proclaim the gospel. You know, the light of truth has to go out. And then we got so many false lights out in that world today. So please support EWTN with your prayers and in any way you can financially. Whatever you can afford to give them is a real contribution to the work of evangelization. And the Lord will reward you with the gospel is being heard. Well, God bless you all, and we'll see you next time.